When you think about Vermont's staple industries, you probably think of maple syrup, dairy, or craft beer. But in the mid-1800s, Vermont's biggest product was wool. Looking at Vermont today, with its dense forests, steep slopes, and harsh winters, it's hard to imagine that it could have ever been home to open green pastures dotted with fluffy sheep. Even more surprising is that nestled in those mountains, there's still a passionate, close-knit community of sheep farmers, shearers, and spinners, continuing this historic process so deeply intertwined with this state's environment and its culture. It all starts with Merino sheep. Centuries of selective sheep breeding in the Iberian Peninsula led to the Merino, a breed with soft, fine, superior quality wool, and lots of it. The Spanish had every intention to keep these sheep for themselves, but when Napoleon invaded in the early 1800s, they were forced to export. The first place to get them in the United States was Vermont.
At the time, this guy by the name of William Jarvis was U.S. consul to Lisbon, Portugal. Apparently he had a good eye for sheep, so he brought some of the finest merino ewes and rams he had and had them shipped back to his farm in Wethersfield, Vermont.
In the 19th century, Vermont looked very different. The forests had been cut for lumber, leaving vast green pastures, perfect for raising sheep. Vermont settlers already had sheep, but the wool was coarse and scratchy. The merino wool's fine texture was unlike anything they had felt. And thus came the Vermont sheep boom. Between 1824 and 1840, the population quadrupled to 1.6 million sheep, an average of 6 per person. These sheep produced 3.7 million pounds of wool, which all had to be processed at mills. In 1836, there were 33 mills. The next year, there were 334.
And then in the 1820s, raising sheep became the primary agriculture enterprise in the state. And in the 1930s, merino were the state's principal livestock.
So what happened? As it turns out, there are better places than Vermont for sheep. Sheep need land to graze, but they can't do that during Vermont's long, harsh winters. They also need shelter and supplemental feed, which costs money. Eventually, the Erie Canal and the railroads connected New England to the western United States, where huge swaths of land make it possible for sheep to graze year-round.
Of course, then the Vermonters couldn't compete.
Today, the West is still the easiest and cheapest place to raise sheep. Plus, the government subsidizes the land, allowing farms to raise flocks in the tens of thousands. The entire state of Vermont only has 17,000 sheep, and they're scattered on sheep farms throughout the state, ranging from small to tiny. In Berlin, Kristen Gallagher and her family raise sheep on the Dodge farm.
We've been here on this farm for 14 years, and I have worked on farms for 25 years.
There are some border Leicester. Those are the ones without fuzzy faces. They are much more friendly than the Merinos. We have chickens, cows, sheep, and 2 cats. This is one of my favorite sheep because she is so friendly, and she is very curious.
At Dodge Farm, the sheep are raised for fiber. Once a year, Mary Lake comes to shear the flock. Kristen used to take her wool to mills around New England, but the turnaround time was too long, and the wool would often get mixed with other breeds. So, Kristen started Aurora Spinnery.
It was obvious to me that there's a need for this scale mill in New England because a lot of people have small flocks and specialty breeds that they don't want mixed with other wool.
Thanks to all this machinery, Kristen and her family are able to process wool exactly how they like. Much of the equipment is for cleaning the wool and improving its texture, resulting in bags and even rooms full of fluff.
Yesterday we had a batch that was so staticky it stuck to the ceiling, the walls, and the door.
One of the things that's really great about this equipment is that we don't just make yarn. We make lots of different products to try to offer different avenues to use that wool.
Aurora Spinnery makes yarn in a wide variety of sizes and colors.
And then here you've got a skein of yarn.
For Kristen, it takes about a week to process her entire flock's wool. For most of the year, Kristen works with other small flock farmers from around Vermont.
Out in the east, we've said, okay, well, let's have heritage breeds, Icelandic, Shetland, lots and lots of breeds, but different colors. And so now you can have yarns that look great without dyeing and appeal to a wide range of knitters that appreciate the variety and they appreciate things coming from a small farm.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that you were a baby, huh? You like the idea of some milk?
But Vermont farmers aren't all raising unique breeds for artisan yarn. Processing wool is costly. For many farmers, it's more profitable to raise sheep for meat, mutton and lamb. Chet Parsons' farm in Richford actually started out as a cattle dairy farm.
So this is the Parsons farm. It's been in the Parsons family since 1919. My grandfather bought it.
An experienced farmer, Chet started teaching about livestock at the University of Vermont Extension in 1985. But the job required knowledge of more than just cows.
But I didn't know much about sheep, so I went out and bought a flock of 30. I jumped right in.
Chet only just retired from sheep farming, selling his flock to Shelburne Farms in 2023. And for all those years, they weren't raised for fiber. They were raised for meat. Looking at the economics, it's not hard to understand why. In Vermont, mills buy raw merino wool for around $6 a pound. The sheep only get shorn once a year, and that produces only 8 to 10 pounds of wool. So that amounts to about $60 per sheep per year. And that's for merino wool. Meat breeds have far lower quality wool, which isn't worth much. The wool from Chet's last shearing season sits in his barn, unused.
The wool is considered, a byproduct or something that is not highly valuable. Some of the medium to coarse grade wool is still useful. I mean, it's this amazing antimicrobial product that can be used in many different ways. So a lot of people do want to raise fiber sheep too.
The challenge? Turning wool into yarn is a labor-intensive, time-consuming process. If farmers want to sell the product themselves, they have to pay mills for their services, then figure out how to market their product on their own, while managing the finances of raising the sheep.
So I figure out my food costs for the winter, and my shearing costs, and the mill costs. So I know a skein costs me X amount, and then I price it accordingly.
There's no lack of demand for yarn. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people took up knitting and crochet. But this new customer base isn't flocking to local wool. It's easier and cheaper to buy from craft store chains, who mostly sell yarn made from plastic. A normal ball of acrylic yarn costs around $5, while a skein of Aurora Spinnery's plain white wool is $30.
Plastic or rayon, any sort of synthetic processing of fiber to make yarn has huge environmental costs. We pay those costs in other ways, to our health, to the detriment of our waterways, of our land.
For many years, Matt Becker has worked in environmental cleanup for the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. 2 years ago, when COVID-19 had him working from home, he bought 6 merino sheep. from the same New York farm as Kristen Gallagher.
Life is short, and I wanted to learn something new, and being in Vermont is an excellent opportunity to learn anything agricultural or farming related because we still have those lands available to us.
Matt is already planning to expand his flock.
And what I can do is I need to start introducing these girls to, they're in their last month of pregnancy, so they need to start getting a little bit of grain. So we're gonna give them oats. I'm trying to make it more than a hobby, yes. Having said that, now that I have them, and I have so few of them, they are principally pets. Hi, sweetheart. Okay. All right, let me in. There we go. Well, I was surprised to learn that they all have personalities, just like your dogs or cats do. You got your shy one, you got your fence jumper, they all have their own little thing.
Vermont's small but passionate community of fiber producers provide a powerful support network for each other. But getting started is still a tough road to tread.
Everybody's really encouraging and offers advice, but what I have realized is that we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge just about sheep and farming. People like myself are learning it over again. Yeah, and sometimes we meet people like Chet and Mary Lake and Kristen who can fill in those blanks.
The bitter cold, snow, and ice serve as a yearly reminder that raising sheep in Vermont isn't and never was easy. But every year, the field will thaw.
Come on, girls. Come on.
And with the arrival of spring comes new life.